Imagine waking up one morning, checking your phone and seeing breaking news alerts. All flights worldwide grounded, global airline systems hacked, total shutdown in effect. Airports across the globe are packed with confused, frustrated travelers. Electronic displays are blank, ticketing kiosks are frozen, no boarding passes, no luggage tracking, no way in or out. It sounds like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, but in a world where cyber attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated and aviation is heavily digitized, this scenario is no longer far-fetched. Today, we'll explore the terrifying consequences of what would happen if someone hacked the global airline system and brought all airlines to a sudden halt. Let's start with how something like this could even happen. The modern airline industry is deeply reliant on digital infrastructure. Everything from booking systems and flight paths to baggage handling and air traffic control runs on complex software. Airlines use global distribution systems, GDS, to manage reservations. Airports rely on centralized systems for security, logistics, and check-in. Planes themselves use avionics that are increasingly connected to networks for real-time diagnostics and communication. A coordinated cyber attack targeting these systems, whether through malware, ransomware, or direct hacking, could cripple operations worldwide. And unlike a natural disaster or weather delay, a cyber attack could hit everywhere at once. Now, let's walk through the immediate consequences. First, global travel would grind to a halt. Imagine the ripple effect of every plane grounded at the same time. At any given moment, there are over 10,000 commercial planes in the sky, transporting over 1 million people. If a cyber attack were to strike, flights in the air would be forced to land at the nearest airport. No new flights would take off. Thousands of travelers would be stranded at terminals with no clear information. Business travelers, tourists, and people visiting family would all be stuck. Honeymoons canceled, medical trips missed, immigration processes paused. The economic impact would be catastrophic. The global airline industry contributes over $3.5 trillion to the world economy annually and supports over 80 million jobs. If flights stop, that entire ecosystem collapses. Airlines lose revenue, employees go unpaid, airports face security chaos, and businesses dependent on air cargo can't move goods. Time-sensitive shipments like organs for transplant, live animals, or perishable goods spoil or get lost. Manufacturers that depend on just-in-time delivery of parts would halt production. Global supply chains would freeze. Tourism would collapse overnight. Countries that rely heavily on air travel for tourism, like Thailand, the Maldives, Greece, or the Caribbean nations, would experience an instant economic crisis. Hotels would sit empty. Tour operators would cancel trips en masse. Local workers would lose income, and governments would scramble to respond. The longer the outage, the more devastating the impact. Let's not forget humanitarian crises. The United Nations and aid organizations depend on airlines to deliver food, medicine, and personnel to disaster zones. A shutdown would delay emergency relief efforts in conflict or disaster-affected regions, risking lives. Families fleeing war or political persecution would be trapped. International adoption, medical travel, and refugee resettlement would all be frozen. Governments would go into emergency mode. Security agencies would begin investigating the origin of the hack. Was it the work of a rogue state? A terrorist organization? An insider attack? Cybersecurity forces would attempt to regain control, while intelligence agencies race to assess if this is an isolated attack or part of a larger plan. The military might step in to secure airspace and protect critical infrastructure. International relations could be strained, especially if suspicion falls on a foreign government. But it doesn't stop there. The psychological impact would be massive. People would panic. Airports would become chaos zones as crowds grow restless and services break down. Imagine the fear of being stuck thousands of miles from home with no clear idea of when you can return. The travel-dependent world we've built would feel suddenly fragile and vulnerable. Fear could spread far beyond the airports. Stock markets would crash as uncertainty grips global economies. Insurance companies would face billions in claims. Airlines may never recover, especially smaller or budget carriers that survive on slim margins. The big players might consolidate even more power, reshaping the industry forever. Communication breakdowns would amplify the panic. Since airline systems depend on networks, everything from online check-ins to mobile boarding passes would fail. Customer service centers would be overwhelmed. Social media would erupt with speculation, conspiracy theories, and frustration. People would demand answers and solutions, but nothing would be certain. Trust in technology would take a major hit. For years, the public has accepted digital convenience in air travel. Automated check-in, digital bag tags, biometric boarding. After a cyber attack, passengers might resist digital tools. Paper boarding passes could make a comeback. Airlines would face pressure to overhaul IT systems, improve transparency, and protect customer data at all costs. Let's explore how long such a shutdown might last. If the attack is sophisticated, say it installs malware that erases critical data or hijacks routing systems, restoration could take days or even weeks. Airlines would need to audit and sanitize all their systems, ensure air traffic control is uncompromised, and test every digital process from scratch. In the meantime, air travel would be frozen. Ground transportation might surge temporarily, but there's no realistic way to replace global air capacity. For example, a train from New York to Los Angeles takes over 70 hours. Cargo ships move at a fraction of the speed of air freight. There is no true substitute for aviation. Some might wonder, can't the military or governments use their own aircraft? While governments may have access to limited fleets for emergencies, they don't have the capacity to move millions of people and goods. Charter planes, private jets, or military cargo flights could support urgent needs, but they can't substitute for commercial aviation. Only once systems are secured, tested, and verified would airlines be allowed to slowly return to the skies. When operations resume, it wouldn't be smooth. There would be massive backlogs of passengers. Prioritizing who flies first would be controversial. Emergency needs, elderly travelers, or high-paying customers. Flight crews would be out of sync, aircraft out of position, maintenance delayed. Airlines might face lawsuits for breach of contract. Governments might need to intervene with bailouts or emergency regulations. Security protocols would change overnight. Expect longer check-in times, tighter cybersecurity standards, and mandatory system backups. Airlines would need to reassure the public that it's safe to fly, not just physically, but digitally. This scenario could also drive innovation. Just as 9/11 led to tighter security and COVID-19 transformed cleanliness and contactless processes, a cyber attack could push airlines to decentralize digital systems, create analog backups, and invest in AI-driven threat detection. It may also encourage greater global cooperation on cybersecurity standards for aviation. From a geopolitical standpoint, if the attack is traced to a nation-state, tensions could escalate rapidly. Sanctions might be imposed. Retaliation could come in the form of counter-cyber attacks or diplomatic pressure. If no culprit is found, nations may increase domestic surveillance and tighten controls on digital infrastructure. Cybersecurity would become a new arms race. Airlines like power grids and hospitals would be labeled as critical infrastructure requiring military-grade protection. New laws could emerge mandating stricter cybersecurity for aviation, with heavy penalties for breaches. Let's also imagine the impact on individuals. Families separated across continents would be unable to reunite. Job interviews, weddings, funerals, all missed. Students abroad would be stuck. Medical patients relying on international travel for treatment could suffer. The mental health toll would be immense. Not being able to move freely would remind people of their dependence on systems they don't fully understand. In the long term, the global economy would shift. Companies might begin relocating production closer to home to avoid dependence on air freight. The logistics industry would be forced to diversify. Insurance premiums for airlines would skyrocket, possibly making flying more expensive. Business travel may decline even further, accelerating the adoption of virtual meetings and remote work. This could reduce airline demand even after flights resume. It might take years for passenger confidence to return to pre-crisis levels. Ultimately, such a scenario is a wake-up call. It reveals how deeply interconnected our world is and how vulnerable it can be to digital threats. Aviation is more than transportation. It's the backbone of global commerce, connection, and culture. Disrupting it means disrupting the flow of life itself. This is not just a warning, it's a call to action. Airlines, governments, and individuals must take cybersecurity seriously. Investment in system resilience, international cooperation, and public awareness is essential. Because in an age where a keyboard can ground a jet, preparation isn't just smart, it's survival. Thank you for watching. If this video opened your eyes to the real threat of aviation cyber attacks, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with others. The sky may be the limit, but only if we protect the systems that keep us flying.